Okay, so a while ago I put in a service request for a MSO2024 like this one with tech. And what was going on was as you would sweep the frequency bandwidth, channel 1 really stood out from the other channels, the in time and in amplitude. So I felt that it needed to be recalibrated, and basically they came back to me after I'd sent it into them, and they told me that no, it met specs, that was common, calibration wouldn't help that issue, but you should get your scope calibrated anyway. And I said no thanks, got the scope back and sold it. So anyhow, since then I've had like a DPO2024, and that one had a similar issue, but on the MSO it had been on channel 1. The DPO2024 was on like channel 4, and it was like half as pronounced, so it wasn't such an issue for me. But on the 2024 I just found it unacceptable and got rid of it. So anyhow, what I have going on is signal generator over here, putting out a 50 ohm signal to a 4-way power divider, excuse me, and 50 ohm terminations on the inputs to the scope, because the scope can't provide those kind of terminations, and the relays there are good out to like 18 gigahertz. The 4-way power divider is basically a 1 gigahertz device, but 0 DC to 1 gigahertz, and by putting those 50 ohm loads there, I end up with the 50 ohm load there, which is what the signal generator is expecting, so that it can give me a leveled sine wave. So I have 4 channels identically set up and overlapping one another, so kind of looks like one, but you can see one channel, the little bit of green comes through. I think that'll show up in the video. So what I want to do is sweep it, or not sweep so much as just step through the frequencies and out to 200 megahertz. And since I'm measuring, let's see, how's my measurement look? It's a little high. Let me change that first. So that's right around 100 millivolts RMS on all 4 channels. A little variation with channel 2 and channel 4, it looks like. So at that, my bandwidth bandwidth on this is a 200 megahertz scope, so we expect that around 70.7 would be the bandwidth cutoff, or the actual cutoff of the scope, roughly. So now I'll go through the frequency in 10 megahertz steps, and there is a hardware frequency counter on these. It's right there on the display, so we can see. We can see what I'm doing as I do it on the machine over here. So 20 megahertz, 50, 80, 100. Let's adjust that a bit. So 110, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 190, 200 megahertz. So see some amplitude variation there, but still we're nowhere near our 70.7. So bandwidth is pretty good, and notice how the channels are actually pretty tight together. So let me see. I think I can show you what it was doing before. If we go to channel 1, I think under more, yeah, the bottom. Skew. It's the A1. What I was getting was something kind of like, I think that way, kind of like that before on channel 1, which, you know, kind of your go-to channel. So channel 1 was doing that, and Tech said that was perfectly normal, not specified in the specs. You know, so if they're using the specs as a way to, I don't know, I just didn't think it was right, but we can get back in there and do away with that. Set to default. That brings it back together, and it seems to me like like one of the channels, I think it was channel 1, was also the amplitude significantly didn't agree, and we have a little variation here, but that could be my terminations or. So anyhow, this is a later serial number, quite a bit later serial number in the MSO2000s compared to the one I had before. I remember that was a real early serial number. So maybe they disagreed that there was a problem with me, but felt that they needed to address that and did so. So because this is what you would expect to see from a tech product, is pretty tight. I mean, and we can go out a little ways on frequency and see what happens. 220, 230, 240, 250 megahertz, 300 there. Starting to get a little squiggly. 370, 380. It's going away, but 390, 400 megahertz. So anyway, bring it back to 200 megahertz. So anyway, this is much nicer. I would be kind of happy with this if I was keeping this one. Unlike that other one was just simply unacceptable. Thanks for watching.